Well, thank you very much, Dr. Fred. I appreciate everything that you are doing, and I very much appreciate all the work that's going on with faculty that have been involved with this program, with the staff that are supporting this program, and most importantly, with the students and their families who are a part of this honors program. It's not something that certainly I don't take lightly, nor the college takes lightly. The work that all of you have invested in becoming honor students and complying with the rigor and the effort that it takes to be successful there is something that's very commendable. It's so important, I think, that we recognize that today, along with the fact that should you choose to move on to a four-year university, we have universities that agreed with us that the work you've done so far is worthy of them transferring you directly into their programs as well. So the effort and the focus that you've got to do the work, to stay steadfast in the effort moving forward is something I just want to say thanks very much for. I look forward to working certainly with Dr. Waterstrat in the future with all of the honor students, but most importantly today, I look forward to seeing those of you that are able, that I can stick around to view this morning and hope the very best for you in the future. Dr. Waterstrat, I appreciate the opportunity very much, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the program.
Thank you, Dr. Castle, and we will get started. I would like to take time to talk about every student here and the great things that I have learned over the past year about each of you, but I know you don't have time for that, and you've been getting to work with your mentors, you've been getting to work with your students, and you know that. But I am hopeful that there will be more opportunities for you to get to know each other. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a senior honors student, Elizabeth Shanks, who's joining us today as a moderator. And then she is going to introduce each of the first year. So this honor symposium is specifically for our first year students who were welcomed into the program in the fall of 2020. We have 4 graduating senior honor students who were in the first cohort that we welcomed the previous year, and Elizabeth is one of those. I will make one quick announcement since Dr. Castle mentioned transfer agreements. He doesn't even know this yet. This is brand new news, but thanks to Jonathan King's interest in transfer opportunities through Western Kentucky University, just this month, the Western Kentucky University Mahurin Honors College approved an agreement that says if you complete the requirements of SCC's honors program, we will welcome you into the Western Mahurin Honors College. And they're very interested in you. You may not realize this, but they are eager to recruit students like you. So if that's an interest, if transferring to Western is an interest to you, you'd like to pursue honors work there as well, email me and let me know. They're eager to meet you and work with you to make that transfer process as smooth as possible. So thank you, Jonathan, for making that inquiry that led to a new agreement. So thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna try to be brief again so that we can, but this is my first chance to talk to a big group, so I'm sorry, I'm excited. I want to thank you, students and mentors, and just tell you, if you weren't smart and strong and persevering students, you wouldn't be here. If you're feeling nervous, don't be. We already know you're smart, and it's going to be great what you do up here. We've seen that all semester, so it's going to be wonderful. Mentors, I cannot thank you enough for taking on an extra project, extra assignment during a really challenging year when you were asked to do a lot of extra things, and you've done it beautifully. I see that in what I'm hearing from your students, and I'm so thankful for everything that you've done. So students, tell your mentors thank you. If they are here with you, please take a moment and just say thank you. And mentors, tell your students thank you. You students, you're why we do what we do. You inspire us and you make our work meaningful. And You are what make us excited to do this every day and every year, and we are so thankful for you. Speaking of stellar students, the student, Elizabeth Shanks, that is going to be introducing her fellow honors students, she is an exemplary student, and she was in fact the first student to apply for the SCC honors program. I checked the records this morning. Very first application came in. I was so excited. This is 2019, spring of 2019, and she's kept that kind of track record her entire time here. She's been the first to do many things. She has gone above and beyond every semester in her own projects. And the reason you don't see senior honors students presenting today is that they are taking a leadership development course, and they're doing different kinds of projects, group projects, and you're going to hear about them in the Gateway podcast, the next Gateway podcast that comes out. So we're appreciative of that collaboration. But in addition to the hard work Elizabeth has been doing all through her time here at SCC, she also has been completing the surgical technology program, and she's going to be graduating in May. And she's already been offered a job. In fact, the director of surgery reached out to her, and I don't want to embarrass her, but I want to brag on her, and encouraged her to apply for this position. So I just want you to know, and when I asked Elizabeth to come, she was eager to do that too. So I'm just really, really proud of all the things that you're doing, and excited to introduce Elizabeth Shanks to you. And there's going to be a program up here if anybody needs to see that. I think Elizabeth has one too. And thanks for those who are joining us from home. There is a recording. There's a recording being taken today that you can share later, but we know we do have some guests joining from home or virtually, and I appreciate you as well.
Thank you for those kind words, Dr. Watershut. I hope you all are all excited. Don't be nervous. I did this a year ago, and trust me when I say that we all felt the same way. I'm excited to introduce our first speaker to you all today. Her name is Aubrey Poffwell, and she'll be presenting the negative impact of medical professionals on the antimicrobial resistance crisis. Her mentor was Dr. Cynthia Mullins. Whenever you're ready, Aubrey.
Yes, exactly. Well, hello. I'm Aubrey Poffwell, and I'm a first-year honors student at Somerset Community College. Today, I will present the research topic that I've worked on all semester, the negative impact of medical professionals on the antimicrobial resistance crisis. Over this past year, our country had its world turned upside down when the novel coronavirus created a health crisis that we had not endured in decades. Oh, sorry, forgot to click. Not only did COVID-19 affect the United States, but countries around the world. Although COVID-19 is an extremely catastrophic virus, there is a worldwide health crisis that's been persisting long before COVID-19, and it is known as antimicrobial resistance. Antimicrobial resistance happens when drugs are no longer effective against microorganisms, thus making infections caused by antibiotic-resistant bacteria much more difficult and sometimes impossible to treat. More than 2.8 million antibiotic-resistant infections occur in the U.S. each year. Antimicrobial resistance can affect people at any stage of life, as well as healthcare, veterinary, and agriculture industries, making it one of the most urgent public health problems. Various factors contribute to the AMR crisis, such as microbial causes, human causes, clinical usage, public perception, and agricultural applications. However, I chose to focus on the clinical usage cause of the AMR crisis, overprescribing and inappropriate use by medical professionals. I decided to focus on the medical professional's role because I feel as if they play a vital role in attributing to the AMR crisis and potentially have the biggest impact in making a change. There are 5 ways in which bacteria can become resistant to antimicrobial drugs. The bacteria become resistant by developing the ability to inactivate the drug, blocking the drug from entering the cell, pumping the drug out of the cell, altering the drug binding site, and developing an alternative metabolic pathway. I chose to research and answer an important question. How are medical professionals negatively impacting the antimicrobial resistance crisis? This question was vital for me to research because it highlights one of the leading causes of the AMR crisis and how medical professionals need to be more aware of the dangers of inappropriate use and overprescribing antibiotic medication. One of the persistent problems contributing to the AMR crisis is the overprescribing of antibiotic medication by medical professionals. The CDC estimates that at least 30% of antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. Medical professionals may prescribe antibiotics simply to satisfy patients. Many patients expect a prescription every time they go to the doctor. Also, medical professionals will quickly prescribe antibiotic medications due to time constraints. Instead of taking the time to run and wait on tests, medical professionals will often prescribe antibiotics so that they can quickly move on to the next patient. Medical professionals will also prescribe antibiotics when they cannot develop an accurate diagnosis or prescribe an antibiotic that's been effective in the past. Medical professionals also tend to prescribe antibiotics repetitively. Here is a picture of the United States showing the number of antibiotic prescriptions per 1,000 population by state in 2017. The darker shaded states had the greatest number of prescriptions per 1,000 people. Overprescribing is prevalent throughout the United States. In some states, the number of prescribed courses or treatments with antibiotics per year exceeds the population, amounting to more than 1 treatment per person per year. Monitoring and reducing the number of antibiotics prescribed by medical professionals would greatly help in the fight against AMR. Another way that medical professionals negatively impact the AMR crisis is through the inappropriate use of antibiotics. Medical professionals will empirically prescribe antibiotic medication rather than performing culture and sensitivity tests. A culture and sensitivity test consists of isolating the source of infection in the patient and testing it against different antibiotics to see which would be the most effective. When medical professionals prescribe empirically, it can often be inappropriate, thus requiring repeated visits and different courses of antimicrobial therapy. This process fails to effect a prompt cure and subjects the patient's normal flora, which are the typical microorganisms of the human body, to an intense and repeated selective pressure that encourages the development of AMR. Also, medical professionals usually prescribe antibiotic medication with the wrong dosage or length of treatment. Studies have shown that treatment indication, choice of agent, and duration of antibiotic therapy are incorrect in 30 to 50% of cases. Also, 30 to 60% of the antibiotics prescribed in ICUs are unnecessary, inappropriate, or suboptimal. These numbers are an objective indication of the inappropriate use of antibiotics by physicians. Another way medical professionals inappropriately use antibiotics is by prescribing a broad-spectrum drug that could be treated with a narrow-spectrum drug. This means that medical professionals choose a more powerful drug to treat an infection when a less powerful drug would have been just as effective. Another example of inappropriate use is prescribing antibiotic medication for viral infections such as the common cold or flu. This illustrates how resistant bacteria become more prevalent if not treated appropriately. In Part A, you can see that the darker circles represent non-drug resistant cells, while the 2 yellow circles represent drug resistant cells. In Part B, as the cells are exposed to an inappropriate drug, the non-drug resistant cells start to die, and the drug resistant cells multiply. With continued drug exposure, almost all of the cells will become drug resistant. This is why it is crucial for medical professionals to prescribe the appropriate antibiotic medication. The major consequence of AMR would be an increase in organisms that are resistant to almost all antimicrobials. If organisms become resistant to all the antimicrobials available, how will infections be treated? Older, less effective techniques in controlling infection, such as amputation, would have to be used. And with no effective way to treat infections, an increase in morbidity and mortality would be a result. In 2020, there were an estimated 700,000 deaths due to AMR, and by 2050, there are estimated to be about 2 million deaths if no action is taken. The reason for this increase is due to the fact that more and more antibiotic-resistant infections will occur and there will be no proper way to treat them. The last time a new antibiotic was introduced into the market was in the late 1980s, and the cost of developed antibiotics is extremely expensive. Thus, many large pharmaceutical firms have dropped out of the market. This is why AMR is such an urgent health crisis. It can also have a major impact on the economy and workforce. Medical professionals can help combat this crisis and reduce the spread of antimicrobial resistant bacteria through prescribing based on culture and sensitivity test results, offering patients alternative therapies or delaying prescribing antimicrobials, educating on the importance of preventing antimicrobial resistance, and becoming involved in antibiotic stewardship programs, such as programs initiated by the CDC. Medical professionals play essential roles within their communities and are well-respected individuals. As a result, they can make the most significant impact in the fight against AMR. In conclusion, antimicrobial resistance is an urgent health crisis that happens when drugs are no longer effective against microorganisms. If no action is taken, AMR can result in increased amounts of morbidity and mortality. Medical professionals contribute to the AMR crisis through overprescribing and inappropriate antibiotic use. However, there are several ways that medical professionals can help prevent AMR. Antimicrobial resistance is a complex topic with an abundance of research possible. Over time, I hope to research and gather as much information as possible to spread awareness and educate others who do not know about this critical health crisis. This past year battling COVID-19 has been difficult on us all. However, the battle continues with the AMR crisis. Thank you all. And there are my references.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Aubrey. Next, I would like to welcome Andriana Carter, who will be presenting Down syndrome in children. Her mentor was Ashley Meeks.
Hello. So, my presentation is about Down syndrome in children and how it affects them in schools. So, kids with Down syndrome (DS) should be treated equally in schools and school-related activities. This is important because these kids should know that they are special in their own way, but are still capable of doing what other kids can. Oops. What is Down syndrome, you ask? Down syndrome is a genetic disorder that alters the course of development and causes characteristics that are often identifiable. DS is caused by an error in cell division, which results in extra chromosomes, making 3 copies of chromosome 21 instead of the usual 2. Most people have 46 chromosomes, but people with Down syndrome have 47 chromosomes. There are about 6,000 babies that are born with Down syndrome in the U.S. each year, and it usually is identifiable at birth due to certain physical traits, such as low muscle tone, an upward slant of the eyes, and a thicker tongue. Different types of Down syndrome. There are 3 different types of DS, and they are trisomy 21, translocation, and mosaicism. Trisomy 21 is usually caused by cell division, and whenever this happens, the chromosome is replicated in all the cells of the body, and this is the most common type of Down syndrome. The next type is translocation, and it is known for about 4% of the cases. The total number of the cells remains 46, but there is an additional or partial copy of chromosome 21, that attaches to another chromosome. And then mosaicism is the least common form, and people that are usually diagnosed with this, it's when there's a mixture of the usual 46 chromosome, and then there's some chromosomes that have 47. Syndrome in schools. People, they usually don't worry, they don't have disagreements about if a child should be allowed in the mainstream classrooms.
You were doing wonderfully. We just had a little trouble here. You could speak up just a little.
Okay. People usually don't have disagreements over if a child with DS should be allowed in mainstream classrooms. They worry that the child won't do the best or that they'll have problems learning, but I think that they should have a chance to be in the mainstream classrooms. And this is because it could help build their self-esteem and they can make new friendships. And that have DS won't be able to be in mainstream classrooms, and this is because they might have some behavioral problems or learning disabilities that require them to be in a special classroom. But even though they may have these things, they can still be able to be with other kids by being involved in field trips, lunch, and recess. Things the teacher can do to make all students feel welcome. There are many things that the teacher can do to make all the students feel welcome. They can make things visual, because kids with Down syndrome do better when things are illustrated. And they can make everyone in the class feel comfortable. They can help build their self-esteem and increase their attention span. Kids with Down syndrome have a little limited attention span, so doing something that will keep them entertained will help them learn better. And something else the teachers can do is talk more clearly. Things that other students can do. They can include the kids with Down syndrome in the games that they are playing and teach them how to play those games. And they can also involve them in the school projects that they're doing. And kids with Down syndrome may look different, but they want to be treated the same way all kids want to be treated, with respect, fairness, and friendship. Those are my citations, and that is all.
Special guest, but thank you so much, Indiana, for speaking on that very important topic. Can you just do you want to? This is a little bit like my classroom. I'm a little bit struggling remembering to keep in mind the virtual audience and live audience. We have a very special guest, Dr. Clint Hayes, who is going to speak to this group for just a moment between meetings. We really appreciate you coming by, Dr. Hayes. Thank you.
I'm happy to be in here and just take just a few minutes to just say congratulations. First of all, you guys are doing a fantastic job, and that's to students and faculty mentors. I mean, faculty folks who have been engaged in this for the last couple of years, been building this program. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing in this. But for you, the students who are going through this honors program, and this is your first year, right? This is everybody's first year in college, period. Right? This is a pretty big deal to be able to come in and do something like that, to go to college to begin with. But to get into something like an honors program, it's just a huge thing. And for you guys, what does that mean for you? What does it mean to be in an honors program? It means that you have an opportunity to do some things that other folks don't get an opportunity to necessarily do when they're going to college. So again, fantastic work over this last year. I was looking down the list of all these things that you guys have done over this last year. Has it been a really easy year? No, it's not. It's been a really terrible year for most of us in many, many ways. But you all were still able to do some incredible things, and to put together all this that you've done in this last year is just incredible to me, and I just want to be able to say that to y'all. So I appreciate the opportunity, Amanda, to come in and just be able to get in here for just a couple minutes and say something between meetings. I think I have 8 of them scheduled today, so I'm looking forward to getting the rest of that stuff done today. But thank you all for what you're doing, all of you, students, faculty alike. And congratulations. Thanks.
And in the spirit of making mistakes, I'll just make all of them so you don't have to think about any. I meant to do something before, and you don't know this. This is a new thing, but for our first year of honors graduates, we have a special honors graduation hood. So I am going to present this to Elizabeth. So next year, guys, on your cap and gown, when you're in your graduation regalia, this is for you to wear in your commencement in the 1st of May. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your wonderful presentation, Adriana. Up next, we have Ms. Taya Davis, who will be presenting the importance of technology in the classroom with her mentor, Carol Katera.
Man, that is noisy. Just a little bit. It took me a little bit to do that. Okay, good deal. Okay, so for my project, I chose the importance of technology in the classroom. We use some sort of technology every single day. It can be a cell phone, computer, blood pressure cuff, thermostat, or even a bulldozer. Technology has changed the way we live our everyday lives and seems to be a growing part of it. With that being said, it's obvious we need to include technology in the classroom. So why is it so important? Why is technology in the classroom important? Technology can help prepare us for the future. It can enhance our memory retention, and it can also teach us to be responsible. I discovered many benefits technology has to offer that I wouldn't have thought of in the beginning. Technology prepares us for the future. It gives us the opportunity to apply ourselves as we would in the workforce. Technology also enhances our long-term memory. I found multiple studies that confirm that the use of technology helps students grasp onto concepts and material more efficiently. Technology also teaches us to be more responsible.
Technology prepares us for the future. To successfully use technology, we must learn to communicate. Technology helps students to learn how to develop everyday skills, and using technology in the classroom can help speed up how quickly students learn content and skills. In order to use technology the right way, we are required to communicate properly. We must question how to use a system in order to use it correctly and successfully. According to Web Anywhere, students can practice collaboration skills by getting involved in different technological activities. Technology often encourages collaborations with students in the same classroom, school, and even other students around the world. Technology helps students learn daily skills. When students learn how to collaborate, solve problems, and use technology at an earlier age, it better prepares them for what is soon to come. Capella Education states it can also help reduce the fear of new technologies in the future by familiarizing themselves with the discovery process for each new tool. If I did not practice driving before I was legal, I would probably endanger other drivers on the road. With anything else in life, it's never a bad idea to test the waters before just jumping in. Using technology in the classroom can help speed up how quickly we learn content and skills. In order to understand how to do a specific task, we need to become hands-on. According to Mark Johnson, using technology in training could have strong implications on how quickly and easily trainees are able to retain what is being taught. A great example of this is learning to take and read blood pressure. If I never get the chance to practice using a blood pressure cuff, how will I learn? Johnson also makes the point that moving from text-based learning to visual-based learning could substantially increase how quickly we can transfer those skills more readily. And here I just inserted some pictures representing how it prepares us for the future. The use of technology enhances our long-term memory. Incorporating technology in the classroom can result in an increase in grade averages. It can help students to be interested and focused on the content they're learning, and it can also create active learners in the classroom. The use of technology in the classroom gives students an advantage of remembering what they've learned. Incorporating technology in the classroom can result in higher grades and academic satisfaction. According to Wei-Ling Zhuang, researchers found that students across different disciplines such as marketing and psychology tend to receive better grades via the personal response system. Technology helps us to be interested and engaged in what we're learning. As a student, it can be very difficult to focus and absorb content on a subject I'm not interested in. When I get the opportunity to be hands-on or engaged in a short video, I tend to be able to recall information quite a bit easier. Johnson states, how many people actually watch 15-minute videos? Very few. However, if it is a 1 or 2 minute video, we will take the time to watch it. This is known as micro-learning, and its goal is to keep learners focused and interest on the topic. Technology can create active learners. When students become hands-on in the classroom, it helps them become active learners. Mandeep Singh states that technology enhances the mobility and operational learning. When the mobility of students are improved, it helps students to better understand the reasoning behind the content. It also enhances mobility in the workforce. Here I just inserted some more pictures, A+ for increased grades. Technology teaches students to be responsible. Technology requires students to be able to communicate effectively and responsibly. Technology enforces students to learn new workforce requirements to be successful. And technology requires that students work by themselves in order to reach their goals. It always has been and always will be important to know how to communicate effectively and responsibly. As a student, I've had to learn how to reach out to my professors through email. Some workplaces are relatively large, so they will also use email to communicate in their business or facility. With this being said, it's important that we learn to communicate, and technology helps us to do so. Moodle is a course management system much like Blackboard. David Ackerman done a study over the student perceptions of Moodle, and he states Moodle can facilitate student-instructor and student-student interactions. Many instructors encourage student-student interactions for coursework, and it seems to be an effective way to incorporate communication through technology. Technology enforces students to learn new workforce requirements. In the 21st century, technology understanding and knowledge is required in most workplaces. It is important for students to understand technology is everywhere and it continues to grow. In a study over computer use in the classroom, Robert Shepard quotes, "The computer is now their culture." Computer technology continues to increase in demand each day. In order to be successful in the workforce and in general life, we must be taught the technological requirements. Technology requires students to work towards their goals. As an online student, it is my responsibility to get my work done on time. If I don't, my grades will suffer and I could possibly fail. Responsibility is a key factor to success. Randall Davies states that through the use of technology, all students are expected to be responsible. Davies also explains students can direct their own efforts based on their own individual needs. The consequences of being unresponsible are often harsh and can diminish our goals. So it is vital that we incorporate some sort of technological learning mechanism to help students become responsible adults. Here I just inserted some more pictures representing technologies everywhere and how it makes us responsible. All right. In conclusion, it's very clear that technology in the classroom is important. Technology prepares us for the future, enhances our long-term memory, and teaches students how to be responsible. The importance of technology seems to be growing and will continue to grow over the years. It truly is amazing how important technology in the classroom is in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. We would like to now welcome our next presenter, Peyton Daniels, who will be presenting Mechanics and Benefits of No-Till Drill, and her mentor was Ms. Deborah House.
As you can see, I'm going over the mechanics and benefits of the drills that you don't have to till the ground up to be able to plant the seeds. The no-till drills, they have many benefits, both for finances and the environment. The traditional drills, you have to either disc or cultivate the ground up, which leads to the disturbance of the ground, which could lead to erosion by either water or wind, which loses the fertilizer you've already, the farmers have spent to put into the ground to grow their crops. With these no-till drills, some improvements are the fuel costs, since you're not going over the land so much on all your equipment. You're not using as much fuel, which is making more profit for the farmers. And you save some time, not going over the ground so often. And the field quality improves. The mechanisms of these drills, they have a seed box on the front, which you put whatever, there's wheat, rye, corn, all different kinds of crops that they've made available to go through these drills. And towards the back of the drills, the ground has to be opened up. So they use a spring-loaded system for the downforce of the disc to open these up to put the seeds in the ground. There's springs that go straight up and down on them and side to side, because with these drills, there's probably 20 to 30 different discs depending on the size of them. And there's, rocks and other factors in the ground that will hit these discs. And if there's not these springs on them to help them move back and forth, you're going to break many pieces on the drill, and then that's going to cut into your profit. The single springs help with the downforce to open the ground, and the side springs are the compound springs, which helps keep it in line. The history of these drills, as you can see, that's a older drill, probably in the late 1900s, 90s or so. It really got popular right before the 2000s. And right now, the most popular place for these is in South America, which 70% of the land that they use for crops uses these type of drills. Whenever the ground is being cleared, plant these, usually there's a ground cover, either straw or with the ones that are planted early in the spring, it's usually snow. So the problem with these is getting the ground open past the straw or snow to put these seeds in the ground. So there's been many different options made for these drills that will remove the residue to be able to plant these. Most of them consist of two different discs, one that would clear the residue, and then a disc that would clear whatever gets stuck on to the disc that's clearing that. Because, you know, if the ground has any type of water or moisture or anything like that, it's going to stick right to them. These have shown to improve the fuel efficiency by about 30% and time by about 15 or so. As I said, there's crops with the no-till drills, wheat, rye, corn, and the previous crop from the last year, since the ground isn't disturbed at all, that previous crop's still there, which gives a ground cover to plant these earlier. So that helps with keeping them not being frosted over and such. The soil disturbance with these, the traditional way, as I said, was to disc up the ground, which leads to the soil being able to be washed away by rain or wind or anything like that. The no-till aims to reduce that. So that reduces the compaction of it, also driving the equipment over top of it, and increases the organic matter and the soil, the structure of the soil and the makeup of the chemicals in it. In the lab, we performed an experiment that was an extension of one that we had in class, and we found that as different weights changed on these springs, the spring constant also changes, which leads to show that different, lengths of springs, the stiffness of the springs is going to change, how the ground's going to open. And the Hooke's law plays a role in this, which it states that the force is equal to the spring constant times the displacement of the spring. And the law shows that the spring constant is proportional to the length of the spring. So if you had a 10-foot spring and you had the constant for it, you make two that are 5, you're gonna have the same constant. And some experience that I've had with these drills is it takes up time to clear the top of the soil, but in the end, that time is still efficiently spent, because even having to clear that off, you still, are saving time on it. And some popular brands of these drills is John Deere, Kuhn, and Kinsey. Kinsey's one you wouldn't see often in this area. They make the very big drills, like 50-foot span, and the common spacing on these are 6 to 12 inches. So as you can see, these drills will save time, money, and the makeup of the soil. Thank you.
Thank you for that great presentation, Peyton. Our next presenter is Paige Hicks, presenting How Does Social Media Affect the Mental Health of Elementary School Students, and mentor Melissa Dalton.
So hello everyone, my name is Paige Hicks, and for my honors program research topic, I chose how social media affects the mental health of elementary school students. So as we all know, over the past 20 years, the world of social media has grown and has a tremendous impact on people of any age. Its main purpose is to share information, to stay connected with friends and family, either near or far away, and to provide entertainment. While social media can provide these benefits, there are also some negative changes that have formed over the years as well. Social media's negative traits can impact anyone, but being at such an impressionable age, having the world of social media at adolescents' fingertips can prove to have numerous negative effects on their mental health, self-image, and overall quality of life. So for this infographic, I have 5 different social medias listed here. And as you can see from the 5 listed, only one of them really had a positive impact on the mental health of teenagers or adolescents, and that was YouTube. And so out of the rest of them, you can just see that they didn't have any positive effects on them. They just had completely negative. So the influence of social media. To start, the different social media platforms that are available, such as the ones listed in the picture, all provide a way for people to connect. But when used frequently, this can lead to seeing negative and hateful words online. As a result of this, as stated by the quote of IJ, research has also indicated a link between social media use and other psychological problems. And this can be any psychological problems, but mainly depression. Likewise, just as social media can be tricky for people who are naturally outgoing, it can sometimes be an even worse place for those who are shy and hesitant. Those who are introverted and shy do not fare so well, as stated by depressive symptoms of adolescence. It may compound their difficulties by reinforcing self-esteem. To further elaborate on self-esteem issues, the world of Photoshop is absolutely no help to this. Apps such as Instagram, Snapchat, and many more have encouraged unrealistic beauty and body standards that are very damaging to one's self-esteem. You can even see in the picture provided that the girl is seeing herself in an untrue way, just because of some comments that she had received online. It is a very sad truth, and as my source states, it might lead to poor psychological adjustment. Now, when researching this topic, I felt that it was only right to include information about last year, the year that we spent completely online. As one could expect, being virtual for hours at a time, every single day, does have an even more negative impact on mental health. It was found that since the COVID-19 pandemic started, that there were a high prevalence of mental health problems. So what was already a problem before, the pandemic only made worse. In fact, when comparing the overall life satisfaction of those who use social media frequently compared to those who didn't, there was a definite difference. This information has grown to be a pressing matter for scientists and the general population alike. And it was indeed found that people who use social media more often had a more negative outlook on life. This information is so evident in children that parents have begun to notice it as well. After all, social media can impact more than just the individual person and can impact individual family lives as well. Parents have noticed that as their children get older, they reported symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and depressive symptoms, such as fear of missing out. Additionally, parents have also seen the effect that cyberbullying and other inappropriate content can have on children as well. So it has become a very well-known action for parents to inform their kids about how hateful the online world can be. If this isn't evident enough that the online world is a problem, then I'm not sure what is. So now that the clear problems of social media have been addressed, what can we do about them? There are at least two different solutions, and while they are vastly different from each other, I believe that they both could prove to be very effective. First, which might be the most obvious one, would be to limit social media use altogether. While this might be difficult for some people to do, whether it be an addiction to social media or other reasons, I believe that with seeing less damaging content online, one would have an increased self-image, mental health, and overall life satisfaction. The second solution would be to fight fire with fire, as I would call it. Believe it or not, some social media companies have realized the effect the internet can have on the younger generation's mind. So, platforms such as Twitter have created resources and outreach programs for those who need help. As you can see by the image provided, Twitter has started the hashtag World Mental Health Day in an attempt to spread awareness of mental health. Now that we have discussed the possible solutions, the research doesn't stop there. I believe it would be interesting to do some research of my own on the comparison of different age demographics and also the extensive amount of time on social media, how it could compare to children who had just limited time on there. So in conclusion, the world of social media has some great aspects to it, but the long-term effects can be pretty worrying. Frequent social media use can introduce deteriorating mental health, lowered self-image, and overall life satisfaction. So either decreasing use in social media altogether or reaching out for help should result in an overall happier and healthier child. And there's my work site. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that presentation. Next, we have Tatum Isaacs, who will be presenting on the effects of mountaintop mining on the Appalachian region with mentor Belinda Gadd.
Hello. Goodness, this is scary. My presentation is on the effects of mountaintop mining on the Appalachian region. What is mountaintop mining? Mountaintop removal coal mining, often described as strip mining on steroids, is an extremely destructive form of mining that is devastating Appalachia. Mountaintop removal is a relatively new type of coal mining that began in Appalachia in the 1970s as an extension of conventional strip mining techniques. This is an image of a mountaintop removal coal mining site in West Virginia. How is it done? Coal companies first raised an entire mountainside, ripping trees from the ground and clearing brush with huge tractors. This debris is then set ablaze as deep holes are dug for explosives. Once explosives are placed into these holes, mountaintops are literally blown apart. Coal companies use explosives to blast as much as 800 to 1,000 feet off the tops of mountaintops. Huge machines called draglines are then used to push rock and dirt into nearby streams and valleys, forever burying waterways. These are what's known as valley fills. The largest fills can approach 800 feet in height and swallow more than a mile in stream bed. In southern West Virginia, where the practice is most widespread, some of these behemoth mines are several thousand acres and still growing. This is what's known as Birchton Curve Valley Fill. It is one of the largest valley fills in West Virginia. This is a dragline. A dragline usually refers to a large bucket excavator that is controlled by a system of pulleys, chains, and ropes that hoist a bucket. The biggest dragline ever created was called Big Muskie. Big Muskie had an enormous bucket that could hold 2 Greyhound buses side by side. It needed so much power to operate the cables and motors that the electricity used could have powered 27,500 homes while the machine was operating. Weighing at over 27 million pounds, it stood nearly 22 stories high and had a 330-foot twin boom and a 220 cubic yard bucket the size of a 12-car garage. An analysis of satellite imagery conducted by Duke University found that a total of 1,400 square miles of Appalachia within the Ohio River Basin have been scarred by strip mining, with the tops and sides of mountains blasted away and steep mountain valley filled with so-called waste rock. In the roughly 12 million acre region of eastern Kentucky, southern West Virginia, western Virginia, and eastern Tennessee, where the mountaintop removal mining takes place, nearly 7% of the land had been or would be disturbed by mountaintop removal mines between 1992 and 2012. Surface mining in such steep landscapes is called mountaintop removal coal mining with valley fills, MTMVF. Because of the influence of MTMVF, the landscape had been permanently altered. What used to be steep forest has now been turned into flat grassland ecosystems. This also affects the flow of water and the way the elements move through the landscape. Draining valley fills, the flat landscape and increased storage potential have been shown to lower stream discharge during storm events and elevate base flow. The water stored in these valley fills is steeped in a reactive matrix of pyrite and carbonate bedrock. Pyrite bound in cold residue and shales produces sulfuric acid when exposed to oxygen and water. In MTMVF spoils, the sulfuric acid is neutralized by carbonate materials, which are intentionally mixed with spoils to prevent acid mine drainage. This ready supply of sulfuric acid, carbonate bedrock, and high surface area spoiled material creates ideal conditions for some of the highest weathering rates in the world. The net weathering reaction generates alkaline mine drainage, which is characterized by elevated ion concentrate of sulfate, calcium, magnesium, biocarbonate, and a good suite of other materials, including major aquatic pollutants like selenium. This image is of an acid mine drainage from mountaintop mining. Companies continue to operate these mines without stringent regulations, even as public health researchers have amassed significant evidence over the last decade showing that people who live near mountaintop mines disproportionately suffer and even die from a litany of health problems, including cardiovascular disease and cancer. In 2011, a peer-reviewed study found that self-reported cancer rates in counties where mountaintop removal occurs are nearly double the rates in nearby counties with no mountaintop removal. The study concluded that among 1.2 million Americans living in counties where mountaintop removal occurs, as many as 60,000 additional cases of cancer are linked to the practice. This image is of a community in Wise County, Virginia, which sits at the base of a mountaintop removal coal mine. A team of researchers at Duke University, North Carolina, as well as the Geological Survey, have conducted extensive research on streams near mountaintop removal and concluded that they are severely polluted by the practice. The U.S. Geological Survey found the impacted streams have less than half as many fish species and about a third as many fish as non-impacted streams. Other studies found similar results on birds, insects, and even bacteria. Impacted stream conductivity, a unit often used as a proxy for pollution, frequently measures more than 6 times the level the Environmental Protection Agency identifies as the limit for preserving their health. Because of mountaintop removal, more than 1,200 miles of streams have been degraded. And this is an image of a creek downstream of a mountaintop removal coal mine in McGuffin County, Kentucky. When evaluating the research for health risk of people being exposed to water contaminated by mountaintop removal, the lack of data on this issue is troubling. In some communities, many families still rely on private wells, which are not subject to state or federal standards for monitoring. Visiting a few of the families who live near active mountaintop removal sites, Human Rights Watch alleged that the mountaintop removal was responsible for contaminating their well water. While public water systems may be less at risk, the water quality in public systems may also be negatively impacted by the mountaintop mining pollution if not properly monitored and managed. Hendricks conducted a survey of public water treatment facilities in West Virginia from 2001 to 2009 and found that mountaintop removal counties had over 5 times the number of Safe Drinking Water Act violations than other Appalachian counties. Due to the lack of resources, some smaller facilities may find it more difficult to monitor than others, but this still raises concern that the community may be unaware that the contaminated water has negative impacts. This is an image of contaminated water from Knott County, Kentucky. Looking at all of what I presented to you today, this is not even part of the horrible impact that mountaintop mining has had in Appalachia. There were so many other statistics and facts I wanted to say, but there wasn't enough time for me to say it all. Just know that mountaintop mining is not good for Appalachia. In fact, it is devastating this wonderful region the more it is allowed to continue. We need to stop mountaintop mining for the sake of our land, our nature, and ourselves.
Thank you for that presentation. Next, we'd like to welcome Jonathan King with A Modern Business Model, Surveillance Capitalism, and mentor Amy Slevin.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Let's get sanitized real quick. All right. Hello, my name is Jonathan King, and I'm here to talk to you today about a modern-day business model called surveillance capitalism. So first, what is capitalism? It is an economic system in which private individuals or businesses own capital goods, according to Investopedia. What are some advantages to capitalism? Advantages are the good distribution between companies and the economic system based on competition and little to no government control. What are some examples of capitalism or capitalistic companies? Amazon is an example. They have little government regulations, and their competitors include eBay and Walmart. Sounds good, right? Little to no government control. Well, there are some disadvantages to capitalism. Some of these disadvantages include inequality. If a new and upcoming capitalist, or if a older gentleman or female capitalist was to pass away, they just pass down their riches to their children. Another disadvantage is environmental costs. A new and upcoming capitalist wants to build a factory, right? So they have to clear cut forests, build that factory, and then after the factory is built, they have to use resources, and some factories pollute water, pollute air, and are very bad for the environment. Excuse me for just a minute. Okay, we're still on this slide. So, now we're ready for the slide. So what is surveillance capitalism? Surveillance capitalism is a modern-day business model by which companies track personal data and analyze it and sell it for financial gain. So how did they track our data? No, they don't hack us, because surveillance capitalism is strictly legal. When we download free apps or use free services, we are in turn giving the owners of those apps and services permission to watch, collect, and sell information about everything we do. Researcher, futurist, and crypto enthusiast Donna Butson said, "If you're not paying for the product, you are the product." This image may be a little confusing to some people. This represents, in a sense, the big eye, if you will, watching everything we do, and the companies in turn gaining financially from that information. So, who is the surveillance capitalist? It is the large technology companies that most of us associate with every day. Some of them, these are the companies that lead in profits in today's market. These companies include Google, Amazon, and Facebook. Some examples that we are less likely to identify as surveillance capitalists are TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. These are the companies that make millions. For example, the so-called free search engine service by Google allowed them to earn over $111 billion. Additionally, Facebook made over $40 billion from you simply by tracking what you do. They are interested in the time that you spend on their site and your intellectual property. What that means is they track your interests, who or what you like and dislike. This slide has a couple personal experiences. The top two photos are screenshots from my phone, and the bottom one was a screenshot from my computer. On the top left, it says designed for privacy. Personally, I think it's designed for data collection. The right image represents, for us iPhone users, we get a notification that says we have spent more time or less time on our phone. And it's shown to us every week. This shows that they track the time that we spend on our phone, and in turn, they earn more money. The more time we spend on their services, the more they know about us and the more money they make. And then the bottom image represents when you go to a website, they ask you, do you want to accept cookies? Some people may think that accepting cookies puts viruses on your computer, and that's not correct. The entire purpose of cookies is to track what you do on their sites or services. According to Alana Bradford, an award-winning writer of tech, health, and science topics, accepting cookies gives the websites the right to sell your browsing behavior to a data broker. This can put you at risk of identity theft if hackers manage to steal cookies that store your personal information or credit card information. Recently, I was on a website or on Amazon, eBay, and other various stores looking for a new desktop computer. So then afterwards, I go to some other website that has nothing to do with it. And lo and behold, here's an ad for a desktop computer. It's happened to most of us. We look for a new couch or anything. Okay. For those of us that have iPhones, could you please get them out? Have a demonstration for you. Go to your settings. You scroll down to privacy settings. If you want to follow the list on the screen, you can, or just follow along with me. Then if you want to go to location services, scroll down to system services at the bottom. Then about middle of the page, there should be significant locations. And then this shows you a list of locations that you have been, how long you've been there, and it even tells you where your home is and how long you spend and how long it took you to get there. So moving on, if you want to look at that in more detail later, you can. Does anybody need me to keep this up so you can write it down, or? Okay. In conclusion, how can we as consumers protect our data? One way to do it is to encourage a general data protection regulation, or known as GDPR. One of these were put into place in Europe, causing international companies to change their policies, according to Ms. Budson. The regulation required companies to tell users what data is being collected and how they can use it, or how it is used. Additionally, it requires clear and active consent if the companies want to share the data with other companies. It also gives you, the consumer, the right to have a copy of the data that they collect on you. And the ability to tell companies what you want them to do with that information, or whether or not you want that information deleted. Consumers need to also stop accepting cookies or limit the amount of cookies if you must be on those sites. Another thing is we can encourage companies to adopt other business models such as consent-based platforms. This means that companies can collect data on you with your knowledgeable permission, but it must be anonymous and you acquire a portion of the proceeds. With this same model, you can become partners with the company instead of users of the company or users of their services. With this model, you can also become an investor within their company. Lastly, consumers need to stop using free apps and services and start using paid ones instead. An example for this is Netflix. A person pays a monthly fee in order to use their services ad-free. This step is crucially important, or these steps are crucially important, because it allows the companies to earn money without having to spy on it or to gather information from us and in turn having to sell it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next, we'd like to welcome David Madden, presenting Sustainability. Are we getting it right? With mentor Heidi Smith.
I think I broke it. Now, say I can't make my joke about today's welding class. Hello, my name is David Madden. I started my career here, educational career here at Berea, in search eventually for my MBA. And I'd like to make the announcement today that I have actually been accepted to Berea College to further that. My topic is sustainability. With it being such a dire situation, we have to ask ourselves, are we getting it right? Is there a better way? Is there a different model? There's no one here that can get on the internet on a news feed today and within just a few moments, the topic turning to sustainability. In fact, we're bombarded by it. It's like trying to take a drink from a fire hose. It's just from every side all the time. It comes from politicians. They're all pushing their own agenda. They all have their own ideas, and nobody agrees. Companies push back against politicians because they want their profits. The activists push back against both of those guys. And the worst of all are the critics, because they push against all three. When you take into consideration, as Hayden Washington from World Watch News Magazine, a global watchdog, that sustainability has gotten to the point, the issue of sustainability has gotten to the point that it actually, where are we at here? It's actually gotten to the point to where it's become such an all-encompassing, opaque subject that no one knows what to do with it. No one knows what to even think. So there's no progress. And there's not going to be any progress. This has been debated for my entire lifetime. I'm old enough to remember when you had to wait in line for 5 gallons of gas when it was 33 cents a gallon. And they told us we were running out. That was in the 70s. So there's no progress, and there's not going to be any. Because these same politicians, these same companies and activists and critics, they use this confusion that we get every day from our news feeds to their advantage. There's no entity that is really looking for a solution. And whether you're a critic or not, It doesn't matter, because if there's a better way of life, shouldn't we take that? Shouldn't we take it seriously to jump on it? So what's the point with all the debates? Is it not to save our children? Is it not to save our way of life? So the first thing that you have to do in any issue, in any problem, is you have to identify that problem. Because with the confusion at hand, if you don't know which direction you're going, what do you do with that? So to define that, then there was a study in 1987 by the Brundtland, it's called the Brundtland Report, which has now been rewritten into a book called Our Common Futures. In this, they agree with another group called the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, or the IPC from here. Also a group named UNESCO, the Earth and Architect Initiative, and the United Nations as well. They define the issues to clarify them as three separate issues. The first issue is social sustainability. Those include human rights, standard of living, health, and identity. The next one is economic sustainability, which includes wealth, research and development, and the further prosperity for our children. And then environmental sustastainability, which includes biodiversity, natural resources, and waste management. Now, all of these groups, they all agree entirely that these issues of sustainability, if you deal with them one-on-one, you're not going to get anywhere. They must be dealt with simultaneously. That's the issue, because with no agreement, with no one seeing eye to eye on anything, how do you ever get progress? I'm just a simple country boy. I was taught lessons in a simple country way, just like most of your fathers, most of us here. My grandfather, he used to drive me nuts with his little stories, his little anecdotes. But to this day, I think I'll carry those with me to my death. And he taught me 3 lessons. The first one is, the more complicated the problem is, think about this, the more complicated the problem is, and the issue of sustainability, admittedly, it's complicated, but is it? The more complicated the problem, the simpler the solution. Because you already know what needs to be done. You already know how to fix it. The second lesson is that you can't take care of anyone else unless you take care of yourself first. That's just a given. His third lesson is that in any enterprise, no matter what it is, if it's running a company, if it's capitalism, it doesn't matter. You need a good solid foundation, because without that, you've got nothing. So to this point, where are we at? Simple solutions, dealing with something one at a time, and a solid foundation. That's what we need. That's what we need for sustainability. That's what we need to fix our future. That's what we need to take care of our children, of you guys, in a way that addresses all sustainability issues simultaneously. Now, the politicians don't want that. Neither do the activists. They just don't, because there's big money in it. But I learned something from a friend of mine, a local dentist that lived in London, who happened to be a multimillionaire. You'd never know it to look at him. Holy T-shirts, but the greatest guy you'd ever meet. But he taught me the lesson that if you want to build a solid foundation, that starts with housing. It doesn't start with the climate or this or that. The foundation for every one of these issues starts in housing and not traditional housing. So what I propose is an entirely different route of going. Because if you all want to build your future, you want to build your equity, you want to build your wealth quicker than anything else, get you a home. Find a way to get you a house, no matter how you have to get it. Because the quicker you get that paid off, the sooner you're headed toward being a millionaire. Instead of traditional housing, I propose, and a company that I am actually actively working toward, is building earth-based homes. Now these are not homes that use concrete, that don't use timber out of the forest, so you no longer have the issues of concrete and deforestation. It's not even an issue anymore. You just don't need it. Because with earth-based homes, first of all, these are gorgeous homes. We're not talking about mud shacks. We're talking about top-of-the-line homes built out of the very dirt that we stand on. You're not getting a pound-for-pound pollution model through concrete, because every pound of concrete that is made creates 1 pound of CO2 emissions. Why are we doing that? This is what the third world countries do. This is how they build homes. This is how they build their equity in their countries, in their communities, and I don't know why we're not doing it. They're fireproof, mold-proof, pest-resistant, earthquake-resistant. And what substance on the planet is more eco-friendly than dirt? I mean, with an earth brick, if you destroy it, what's your byproduct? Dirt. There's nothing that dirt can do to the atmosphere or anything else it's not already doing with you walking on it. The best thing about these homes are, these are the tools that you actually use to build these. You build these homes yourself. You're not paying a laborer. You're not paying a bank. You're building these yourself out of the dirt that you're standing on. They have a lifespan, a meridian lifespan of 500 years. I mean, what does that mean? 500 years. How many of us here is going to live 500 years? The thing with that is, you're going to pass that on to your family. They don't have to start over. They don't have to start from scratch to go out and begin their careers. From day one, they are able to have a type of security that only a few people know. Now, I do own my own home, and I can tell you, for the last couple of years, I've not had to work because, well, I had a health issue. It's resolved now. But if I didn't own my own home, I would have been on the street. So when you take into consideration homes like this one here on the bottom is actually a model of a house in Taos, New Mexico that has been lived in for 1,000 years. That's the template we need. That's what we need in order to actually go forward. So how does that help everyone? It helps everyone economically because nobody's having to start over again. Socially, if I can do it, so can you. Environmentally, I've already laid that out. You cannot hurt the earth with the earth. So, other than education, that deals with all 17 issues that the United Nations has put forth in order to fix the sustainability problems. I've included this little slide here This is my daughter, Sterling. Now, why did I include that? Because she's the reason that I made this speech. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Nay Murray, who will be presenting the influence of Black writers on literary culture in Kentucky, and mentor Lynn Shear.
Hello everyone, my name is Nikki Murray, and today I'm going to talk to you about the influence of Black writers on literary culture in Kentucky. First, can you name me 2 major Black authors that you learned from elementary school to high school? For me, I could not even name you one. Growing up throughout grade school and high school, we learn about predominantly white writers. We hear about Mark Twain, Harper Lee, Ray Bradbury, and many more. But how often are we assigned to read from a Black author? It is crucial we learn about and read from other cultures and perspectives because white Americans live very different life than those of color. By doing this, we are learning about and hearing about different aspects and educating ourselves about the different issues of the world. To combat this problem of not learning enough about Black writers, I wanted to start with Black writers who have influenced writing where I am from. And to broaden that just a little more, I chose the Appalachian region. I chose this region because I wanted to learn from them about the struggles and problems that they still face today. Therefore, I have chosen to study about the Appalachian poets and to see how Black writers have influenced the literary culture in Kentucky. First, let's discuss the Appalachian poets. Who are the Appalachian poets? They are poets of color who live in the Appalachian region, which stretches across the eastern United States. Some of the poets include Frank X. Walker, Nikki Feeney, Jeremy Payton, Danny Quintos, and many more. Now, what does Appalachian mean? Appalachian was a term coined by the most famous Appalachian poet, Frank X. Walker. He says that one day while he was reading his dictionary, he looked up the word Appalachian. The description of this said the white residents of the Appalachian region. With this, he immediately became discouraged and thought that he would never be considered a great Appalachian writer because he did not fit the description of an Appalachian. Therefore, he coined the term Appalachian to mean people of color who live in the Appalachian region. Now, to help me answer my question, I read various poems and stories by these Appalachian poets. The first poem I want to talk about is Ceasefire by Frank X. Walker. In this poem, he discusses his feelings and attitudes towards his Black family members marrying white men and women. In this poem, he says, birthing human treaties in a domestic race war, negotiating ceasefires with families whose maiden's name are enemy. In this poem, he leaves a very powerful message. To grow up Black in America, you are constantly being profiled. According to the Pew Research Center, over 65% of Black adults said that they have been in situations where they have been profiled just because of their skin color. With Frank X. Walker's writings, he reflects his attitudes towards this in each of his poems. Frank X. Walker grew up in Danville, Kentucky, where he faced much racism and discrimination. He was born in 1961, just 3 years before the Civil Rights Act was passed, so the world that he was growing up in was still adjusting to desegregation. Therefore, his emotions are displayed throughout his writings. The second piece I want to talk about is Pond's White Beauty by Danny Quintos, which is featured in the book Blackbone. In this story, or in this poem, she explains how her and her sister watched a commercial for Pond's White Beauty Cream when she was younger. This commercial featured two Latina women, one with lighter complexion and one full of melanin. A man approaches both of these women and smiles at the one with the lighter complexion and frowns at the one with the darker skin. After this, the woman with the lighter skin tone tells the other that she needs to use Pond's White Beauty Cream to lighten the sun from her face. After this, the man later returns and then tells them how beautiful they have both become since they are both now light-skinned. Quintos then goes on to explain how impressionable this was on her and her younger sister. They were both dark-skinned, and since this, they believed that they needed to be lighter to appear beautiful to society. With this, it goes to show how society has affected people of color and how they view themselves. They thought that if they were not white, then they were not beautiful, and they did not fit the social standards that were placed on them. The last piece I want to discuss is Brown Country by Nikki Feeney. In this, she explains how she likes country music, but how she wishes that these authors of the country music wrote about Black people living in the holler and songs about their experiences. In this, she tries to convince the reader that she's a country singer. She says, "They won't ever say I ever sang a good country song. I'm the wrong shade of country. They'll just be mad that I never let you forget for 1 minute that country, the land, is color-coded. And the country, the music, is pretty shady too." With this, she could be referring to some country songs, specifically one by David Allan Coe. In one of his songs, he sings about how white women being with Black men make him sick and want to throw up. He also says that some Black people never die, they just smell like one. This goes to show how much of the country music that she heard reflected racist attitudes. At the end of her poem, she then states, "Country music is historical. This is the music we were lynched by. These are the hangman songs." From reading these pieces, I have come to the conclusion that Black writers have influenced literary culture in Kentucky by talking about their experiences in life growing up as a person in color, and which should inspire others like them to have the courage to do the same, and to write about the problems they have faced and still face to this day. These literary works also help Appalachia to be seen as diverse and full of culture. I also believe that these works have helped educate those who have read them about racism and discrimination. Living in a small town with a population being 94% white, we are sheltered and do not know or grow up learning about racism and its effects of those of people of color living in our community. These writers have also impacted literary culture because they are speaking of their own experiences. Therefore, they are less likely to be stereotyping themselves as others portray them or write about them. They are depicting everyday examples which help us understand how Black Americans have lived in this country. While researching the influence of Black writers had on literary culture in Kentucky, I think it is also important to note the fact that besides just literature, Black people have infected the Appalachia in many different ways. If it were not for West African enslaved people, then bringing the banjos over to the Western world, then bluegrass music would not be what it is today. For Kentucky specifically, what is one thing we are most known for? The Kentucky Derby. Isaac Burns Murphy was a Black man who was the first person to ever win the Kentucky Derby 3 different times, and this makes him the greatest American jockey of all time. In conclusion, Black writers and Black peoples have influenced the Appalachian region greatly in many ways. We need to be taught more about Black culture and the influence it's had on society in schools. Black influence are important to the society, and it's time we recognize that fact. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Before I present the next presenter, I would like to share a quote with you that I heard Nelson Mandela say. And after hearing many of your presentations, I feel that it's fitting. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." And I feel like we're off to a great start today. Our next presenter is Taylor Parnell, who will be presenting the importance of suicide prevention with mentor Ron Mace.
So I'd first like to say that I'm not happy about my presentation looking like that. Okay, so my name is Taylor Parnell, and today I'm presenting to you the importance of understanding and preventing suicide. So the key points in my research is to establish the significant risk factors and how that we can help prevent suicide. So in this picture, I've included some statistics. So 12 million adults had thoughts of suicide, 3.5 million made plans, 1.4 attempted suicide, and 1.2 made plans and attempted suicide, and 250,000 made no plans but still attempted suicide. Suicide statistics. So suicide is an act in which one takes their own life, and sadly this happens every single day. There's a suicide every 12 minutes. And for one suicide for every 25 attempts in young adults, and 1 in 4 for elderly. And did you know that 20 to 25% of American adults are depressed? And in this picture, I have CDC Vital Statistics. So these are suicide rates that rose across the U.S. from 1999 to 2016. And in Kentucky, we rose from 31% to 37%. And as you can see, the other states as well. Being aware. So this is the first step in for us helping to prevent suicide. We need to know the resources that are available for us if we need them or for someone that we love. So the National Suicide Hotline has a call and text line that's open 24 hours. We can call 1-800-273-8255 or we can text 741-741. And in this picture, I've included a card that you may have seen before. We receive these at schools. And it also has a website that you can research as well. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at that in case you need to jot this number down or if you know someone who might need to use these as resources. Also, did you know that one person attempts suicide every 31 seconds? And 25 to 50% of those have attempted before they were successful. Knowing how to be prepared. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration is a partner of the National Action Alliances for Suicide Prevention. They help reduce the effects of suicide thoughts and behaviors, and instead, they promote the strength and support to protect those who have suicide thoughts. Also, they work to help us explain the complexity of suicide. And they also have a 5-action rule in play to help take precautions, and they include 1, asking, 2, keeping these people safe, 3, just being there for them, 4, helping them connect, and we stay connected. And sadly, suicide doesn't discriminate. So it takes all people. So it's not no age, no gender, or a race. It's everyone. Scientists are now studying to see if long-term factors or even genes could increase the risk of suicide. And in this picture here, I have the suicide awareness symbol, and I wanted to make everyone aware of Suicide Awareness Week that happens September 5th through the 11th. Okay, here's my why. So suicide prevention is so important to me because my grandfather, who was 58 years old, committed suicide in 2017. So when he committed suicide, I was unaware of warning signs and behaviors. I was unaware that this could happen to me or anyone in my family. And I had labeled this as something that happened to young adults or, like I said before, anyone but me. So that's when I decided that it was time for me to be aware. It was the time for me to understand why suicide was so important and how we can prevent it. So many who die from suicide are not even known to have mental health concerns, and like I said before, are not a certain age. Some factors that play a part in this is relationships, substance use, physical health, job, money, legal issues, or even stress. Now we have the government, healthcare, public and health employees are working together to make it easier and to make us understand how to prevent suicide. And now firearms accounted for 23,854 suicides in 2017, and sadly, that included my grandfather. So, I hope this presentation took you back to a time that you needed help, or you knew someone that did need help. And so now you have the resources available that you can. So we can't bring back who we've lost, but we can move forward from here in helping prevent people from dying now. And so I hope that this story about my grandfather can be a light, and that we can just be a listening ear for someone who might be in need. So how can we move forward from this? How can we apply this knowledge today? There's been a dramatic increase in calls and texts to the suicide hotline since the beginning of COVID-19. And many of you may have experienced some depressing factors have happened to you since COVID-19, because life is quite different since COVID-19. So how can we help, and why this might be? So we have thousands of anxious, stressed, isolated callers who are flooding these helplines. There are teenagers, early adults, and senior citizens. They've lost their jobs, homes, businesses, relatives, and even big events. So such as me, I didn't graduate high school in 2020 due to COVID-19. I missed senior prom, and I know several of you have also done that as well. So some of these people are fearing suicidal thoughts that COVID-19 test could be an instant death sentence, and some are just in constant fear. So I hope that as my next research, I can correlate how COVID-19 and suicide play a part together. So I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to present my story, and I hope that this has made you be aware and how we can help other people from here on. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation and for sharing that with us. Next, we'd like to present Jacob Strunk with Economic Impacts of COVID-19 on the Efficiency of the Restaurant Industry with mentor Dr. Chris Phillips.
I think Dr. Phillips passed out a little handout for you all. It's just an article that you can go over if you want to. It just conveys some of the same information that I'm going to go over in my presentation. So I am Jacob Strunk. My project today is over COVID-19 and the effect it had on the efficiency of the restaurant industry. COVID-19 has affected us all in different ways. Some of you may have lost jobs in the restaurant industry, or like me, have seen the effects of it from the outside looking in. Why I chose this topic, I just thought it was interesting, and I wanted to take a deeper dive in and see how it is affecting it and why it did so. I will discuss the COVID-19 impact on employment, revenue, and the efficiency of the restaurant industry, how the government has offered its support toward the industry, changes implemented during the pandemic that are here to stay after COVID, and what an efficient restaurant industry looks like post-COVID. I have a couple theoretical frames that I will use to base my research upon. The first is producer surplus. What COVID did essentially was take away a majority of consumers for the restaurant industry, and it made that less efficient. This can be linked to what we call producer surplus. Producer surplus is a difference in the business is willing to sell the product for and what the consumer will buy the product for. With less customers, the market experienced dead weight losses. In the case of COVID-19, this is defined as the loss of producer surplus due to an underproduction. The loss of customers have led to significant dead weight losses for restaurants. My second theoretical frame is COVID-19 is monopolistic competition. COVID's effect was in large part due to the type of industry that the restaurants are in. They are monopolistically competitive. This is characterized by a large number of firms, no barriers to entry, and product differentiation. Typically, it is distinguished by price and quality competition to drive sales and attract customers. This type of industry revolves completely around the customer, which is why COVID-19 had such a large impact and led to this inefficiency. So how did COVID-19 affect employment of the restaurant industry? The restaurant industry, more than any other industry, was affected by the COVID. It has suffered significant losses and sales. According to the national restaurant industry, more than 8 million employees were laid off or furloughed at the beginning of the pandemic. This is 3 times the amount of any other industry. Many closings occurred, and according to the NRA, more than 110,000 restaurants closed either temporarily or for good. Another effect of COVID is that employers are having a hard time finding quality employees. There are a couple reasons for this. They could consider the job to be unsafe due to the conditions, as in they're serving people who are not wearing masks and in crowded kitchens. These jobs, as we saw with the beginning of the pandemic, they are not as stable as grocery stores or e-retailers such as Walmart and Kroger. So how did COVID-19 impact the revenue of the industry? I began to look at the industry as a whole and how it was affected. According to the National Restaurant Association, the industry saw a more than $240 billion dead weight loss. After learning this, I decided to dive in and look at some local restaurants that we have. The top graph is of a local dine-in restaurant. As you can see, the blue is from 2019 sales and the orange is 2020 sales. The gray is the difference between the two. As we look at quarter 2 of the top graph, we can see that there's a major difference between 2019 and 2020. This was almost a 43% decline, and more than $325,000 were lost in that at the dine-in restaurant. As we look at the second graph at quarter 2, we can see that the 2019 and 2020 sales were pretty close. It was only a 5% drop from 2019 to 2020 for the drive-through restaurant. I think this shows that COVID-19 affected different restaurants in different ways. These charts show the pandemic has created an inefficiency in the industry. So how has the government stepped in to try and support and regulate the industry? On March 27th of 2020, the government passed the CARES Act. This allocated $350 billion to the Paycheck Protection Program. These were loans used by small businesses and large businesses that helped to keep employees on their payroll and keep them stimulated through the beginning of the pandemic. The PPP was designed to help relieve businesses that were struggling to pay and stay in business. Recently, there's a second set of PPP loans given to businesses that have less than 300 employees and saw a 25% decrease in any quarter from 2019 to 2020. This set of loans were able to be used in a variety of ways, including rent, utilities, and upgrading technology. This shows that the government saw the levels of inefficiency the industry was facing and decided without their help that there would be drastic changes in the future for the industry. These loans were able to keep businesses afloat now, and as they are bringing out new, as they're helping now. So what changes were made during the pandemic are here to stay. Time and money were used on improving delivery and pickup options at many restaurants. Food delivery services such as DoorDash and Uber Eats have become very prominent, and they are here to stay. More than $445 billion in 2020 was made through delivery and pickup options. There will also be changes to inside restaurants. Communal tables will likely be done away with, and they will integrate new technology and such as touch screens, and this will minimize human interaction. These changes will be made to keep customers interested, therefore to meet the demands of the monopolistic competition. What can be expected after COVID to define an efficient restaurant industry? For the restaurant industry to thrive in the new world after COVID, two things must happen. The first one is they must treat employees with respect and give them the opportunity to move up in the business. New employees or bad employees will quickly lead to failure, especially in the industry that the restaurants are in, as high quality workers are needed. The second is new technology needs to be implemented and used correctly. This goes back to what I said in the last slide, that businesses that have implemented the new technology will use it, and then if they did not implement it during the pandemic, they need to think about doing that now. So this will help, as this will help the businesses to continue to run efficiently. COVID's impact can be seen on many facets of the restaurant industry, and efficiency will be achieved as dead weight losses are eliminated over time. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Our next presenter is Austin Van Hook, who will be presenting how social media improves small business awareness with mentor Margie Childress.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank my mentor, Ms. Childress, for being my mentor for this semester and helping me through all this, as well as Dr. Waterstrat for affording us all this opportunity in the program. So my presentation was about how social media can improve consumer awareness of small business. And I looked at this mostly because I saw online small businesses across the United States opened up using social media as their main marketing strategy. Someone's spilled hand sanitizer up here. They've opened their small businesses using social media marketing as their main marketing strategy. And I saw it happening mostly last year during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's what spurred on this presentation. My overview is I researched how and to what extent does social media increase consumer awareness of small business, as well as why. A secondary research model that I looked at was which methods were used. As you can see up here, I've got the definition: virtual platforms on which people can synchronously or asynchronously create, share, modify, or react to various forms of content with various forms of content as well. It's important to look at the why. Well, social media has many benefits as well as drawbacks that we will get to later. Social media has low cost and a high ceiling, very great potential. The potential reach to different audiences compared to other forms of marketing like television commercials or newspaper advertisements. We see that the young people nowadays, as Ms. Hicks mentioned earlier in her presentation, are also using social media. They could be using it for different methods, but they will eventually become young adults and consumers that are still using social media as well. It has a multitude of uses, and it's very adaptive. So I looked at how. How does social media, and to what extent does social media increase consumer awareness? They do it mostly through two factors. These two factors are electronic word of mouth, or EWAM, as I've come to call it. It's basically the buzz around social media and your small business, your product. And it's not created necessarily by the business itself, but more of the consumers. The consumers create this electronic word of mouth, and they spread it amongst themselves. And the business can only do so much as to control and manage it. They can't really establish it. Putting forth electronic word of mouth to consumers typically doesn't go well. And many consumers see beyond the veil that you're putting down. The second factor that social media uses is customer engagement. Customer engagement is what businesses can do. They're actively doing this. It's a key to small business survival. It drags consumers away from larger corporations like Walmart or Amazon and brings them down to stay with the small business. And we see businesses doing customer engagement all the time, mostly using customer service with hotlines. On social media, they more actively will respond and make a conversation with their customers and their customer base. The main method I found was that web care was used. Web care is basically a strategy used to manage a negative electronic word of mouth and engage customers at the same time. There are two different strategies of web care that you can use, proactive and reactive. Proactive web care is more focused on reaching out to consumers. Reactive is more of waiting for the consumer to reach out to you. Now, it's important to realize that not every company has the resources necessary to sit down and respond to every single comment that is made on their products, but companies can generally react to some of those questions. Now, my example that I'm going to put forth to demonstrate which might be a little bit better is with this pencil. This pencil was advertised to me to be the best pencil, and it's going to last forever. But say if I go out and I have this pencil, the first time I use it, it snaps in half, then I'm going to be generally upset. So I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to tell them I'm upset. But maybe I won't reach out to the company. Without reaching out to the company, a reactive web care company is not going to be responding to me or focused on helping me. A proactive web care company is generally going to reach out to me and offer me a new pencil. Or they're going to offer me some sort of alternative, maybe a lead pencil. I also found that developing a cost-effective social media strategy is important. Generally, social media is not a high cost unless you're developing resources specifically for social media in your small business. Developing the strategy is setting realistic and measurable goals. 5 of them are an example right here. These goals are just a template, but you can really set any goals whenever you make these. I really looked at the drawbacks of social media in a small business setting, maybe more so than I looked at the advantages of it, because these drawbacks are very important to realize. Small business owners across the United States, and especially if they're in the older category, may not realize the training and understanding that they need to use social media in an effective way as to market. Right up here, I've got a quote. 65% of small business owners lack the necessary training. That's just a quote from 2013, but I found that they definitely need to invest some human resources as well as financial resources to develop these knowledge and understanding. A secondary drawback that I was looking at was definitely the negative electronic word of mouth. Negative electronic word of mouth is almost more important than positive, as negative electronic word of mouth is more likely to push people away than positive is to bring people in. And I see that a lot with myself, especially whenever I'm on Amazon. I'm not going to sit there and go through the positive reviews all day. I'm generally going to go to the negative ones as well, and maybe even longer, and see, is there a quality issue? Is there a customer service issue? Why shouldn't I buy this more than why should I buy this? I do have a quote here. One negative review can cost up to 30 customers. So that's one person whose pencil is broken in half going to look at the pencil, causing 30 other people to not buy the pencil. My conclusions that I found, those two strategies that I talked about nearly the entire presentation, managing electronic word of mouth, whether it be positive or negative, which is basically, again, managing the buzz around your business, and building and creating customer engagement are the two main factors in creating social media marketing. The best method for social media marketing is, of course, web care, whether it be proactive or reactive. Reactive web care is generally less effective than proactive, but proactive web care definitely will lead to greater success in your small business. Further research, I want to look at maybe local small businesses, what they have, if they use it. I know that one of my older bosses that I used to have maybe wouldn't do so good on social media, but he could definitely look to learn and see what he could get from it. So maybe I could set something up there. I also would like to look at would newspaper advertisements versus television advertisements versus social media marketing have any exclusive results that would show if social media marketing is definitely better, because there's only so much reach that a television advertisement can have. They only play those for so long, and when they do play them, they generally aren't around forever unless you have a VCR. But social media is available at any time, anywhere. You can get on your phone and check, and you'll see that as long as it's not deleted. And with that, I believe I'm finished. Here are my citations if you need those. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for that presentation. Our last presenter today will be Gabe White, presenting What is the Future of Aviation Power Plants with mentor Jerry Graham.
Hello, my name is Gabe White, and I am presenting on what is the future of aviation power plants. Background. I am a private pilot with about 80 hours of flight time, and I'm also a training aircraft mechanic, finishing my second semester. Much of my flight time is in small four-seater aircraft, such as the Piper Cherokee, which is in that picture. That picture is me just after my first solo flight. My first flight lesson was when I was 14. I have always been interested in aviation and intend to be in aviation my whole life. After I get my airframe and power plant certification, I intend to work as an aircraft mechanic and fly many kinds of aircraft. Intro. My question is, what is the future of aviation power plants, also known as engines? I chose this topic for a few reasons. Number one, I am in a power plant class, so it is interesting to look at the future of what I will be studying. Number two, I have an interest in what my future job could look like. Being prepared for new technologies that may appear as I work would be beneficial for me. Number three, developments could lead to better air travel for everyone. Everyone should be knowledgeable about developments in air travel, especially those who fly a lot, as developments could reduce the cost of flying and make flying more enjoyable. Intro continued. For my purposes, there are two types of aircraft engines. Those are reciprocating and turbine. The main difference is their combustion cycle, and you can see the turbine engine, which is on the top, has a continuous combustion cycle known as the Brayton cycle, and the reciprocating cycle on the bottom is non-continuous, as all events are in the same combustion chamber, and this is the Otto cycle. Methods. To answer the question, I reviewed several articles about what technology is in development and what could be coming. I selected these sources because they allow me easy access to information such as interviews, estimates, and predictions. I can draw a few conclusions myself based on my experience and various things that I've seen and heard, but looking at these sources helps to change or confirm what I originally thought. These articles include some on hydrogen fuel, diesel fuel, electric integration, electric powered, reduced emissions, improved efficiency, and several others. Findings. From my sources, I can predict what future projects to anticipate. There is a possibility for engines to run on hydrogen, either directly as fuel or as a means of creating electricity that could power a motor. We could also look forward to improvements in fuel efficiency and lowered emissions. And engines may be controlled electronically and be intelligent to a degree, making small adjustments without needing a pilot or mechanic. This includes engine health monitoring and could reduce maintenance and fuel costs by only using fuel as needed. And more I see engines can monitor themselves to reduce pilot workloads, especially on commercial jets. Finding continued. Given improved batteries and proper certification, electric power may become widespread. Airbus has already begun testing on electric aircraft, although primarily for short-range flights. And I think the batteries are what is holding electric power back. That goes for a lot of other electric-powered vehicles as well. The batteries are simply too heavy, bulky, and inefficient for electric power to be viable for the average consumer. In time, this could be improved, but I will see that it will be a problem for the development of electric-powered aircraft. Diesel fuel could also be major. It is already in some aircraft today, easily accessible, and perhaps more efficient than 100 low lead, also known as avgas, which is used in most aircraft piston engines. Diesel could reduce the operating costs of flights. 100 low lead is one of the few leaded fuels still being used today, and many wish to phase it out for environmental and practical reasons. One article expressed that developing new technologies will be slower and on a smaller scale in comparison to the history of aviation. The peak of the development of engines could be nearing its peak. Aviation has come a long way since 1903, but new developments are slowing down, and electric power is the only big new thing coming. Although its development is going to take some time. And number 4, we can expect higher power to weight ratios on new engines. And as in the last point, that will be small improvements relative to historical developments. Future directions. In summary, the future of aviation engines will have many advances in focusing on improvements in efficiency and emissions. The only way to truly know if any of these predictions are correct are to wait until advancements are implemented. I plan to graduate with my airframe and power plant certificate and work as an aircraft mechanic. I am sure that I will encounter some of these advancements as I work. My next project could be on the differences in aviation between America and other countries. I think that Europe is especially interesting as they are more climate aware and tighter packed than many US states. Here's my sources.
Oh my goodness, let's celebrate these students. This is the most wonderful professional meeting I've been to in a long time and the most diverse topics that I've gotten to hear, and I love it. I could not be more proud of these students or more thankful for the mentors who've worked with you. Really, I mean, you've just really dug deep into important topics, and I am so impressed with everything that you've done. So thank you so much. I hope you're feeling really good because we are all feeling really proud of you and impressed with what you've done. You've been recognized here today, and we want today to be a special time to recognize your work. But I want to remind you that all of you, on our honors students, senior and first year honors students, you're going to be recognized at our honors night ceremony also. If you haven't gotten communications about that, you will be getting more. You probably have already gotten several. There are a lot of award-winning students in this audience, as you might imagine. So Honors Night, it is virtual this year, one more time, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is going to be on 2 social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. We have social media experts here. So be sure to tune in and support your students, faculty members, and students. Don't miss that opportunity for recognition. Let's see. Are there other announcements that I need to make? Any mentors have anything that you need to add or anything else? Sarah, yes. No, I thought you had something. All right. Yes, photos. Okay, great. Yeah, before anybody goes anywhere, we want to capture this day. We want to get a photo of everyone outside. We can, if we're outside, we can remove our masks for a photo outside. And Sarah Modgeling here will give you further instruction. You'll just go right out that door. I would love for us to have had the chance to ask each presenter more questions, so feel free to do that casually as we're hanging out here. We're finished a few minutes early, and I want to talk to all of you guys. You did a wonderful job. Let's thank Jean and Jasmine and Stephen. They made this possible. They made the virtual aspect of the event possible. They have a recording that's going to be available that we can share, so that's wonderful. And let's give Elizabeth a round of applause also for introducing each of our speakers. We really appreciate her. All right, students, students and mentors, we want pictures of. Okay, just students, if you could follow Sarah, and she's going to get a photo, okay? Thank you all.